But like if my phone dies or if I lose my car keys, I lose my shit.
Yeah.
The resilience of people that have had everything taken away from them and then come out and are cool. I'm like, I would not make it. And it neighborhoods. I want to kind of discuss mental health while being a prisoner. How mental health is addressed. Does it get worse for people? You've kind of talked about rehab in prison. It clearly doesn't work because it's not our focus. Our focus is punishment and not rehabilitation and education. Right. But if you're suffering from a mental health crisis while a prisoner, what are your options? And are there ever options of improving that mental health?
That's a good question. I think that it's like a matrix, right?
Okay.
It's not even a like a plain like spectrum scale. There are so many different elements and like perspectives where we can look at how we can look at mental health. So I have like major depression. And
Now, currently, or you had as a prisoner?
no, I've had it since I was a kid.
Okay.
Yeah. And before going inside, I finally agreed to take antidepressants.
Okay.
So when I went in, that's what I took because that's what I knew worked for me. And, working my spiritual program and doing all that stuff. But there are women who, because of the circumstances that they were in that led to them getting arrested. I mean, even saying committing a crime doesn't feel right because criminalization, it just all depends on what the government decides is a crime at that time. Okay. Right? So
yeah.
Right now, getting an abortion in some places is a crime. It wasn't a few years ago. Right. So you call somebody a criminal, what does that actually mean?
Right.
So these people are in these situations where they end up getting arrested and coming in, and that is never really addressed. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them get right back out, go right back to that environment.
Right.
Usually, however, when you take the drugs and alcohol out of the system like we do, for the most part, when we're incarcerated, there's still a lot of stuff there. So getting clean is one thing, but dealing with the children that you've lost, dealing with, the abuse that you endured before you went inside, dealing with never really ever being able to make your own decisions. I mean, these are all real life examples from people that I was locked up with. Mm-hmm. There were women who had lost their children and were committing crimes so that they could afford a lawyer, committing crimes so that they could get their kids back. And they got busted, in the hustle and got thrown in prison. They lost their kids way before they got locked up, but that never really, they were never really able to address that. Mm-hmm. One of the women was selling drugs. She dropped out of school when she was 11 and was selling drugs on the streets and shot somebody who was, abusing her. And she's been in for 20 years now. There are women who go in with major mental health problems already. I have a friend who is still in there, who killed her mom in a blackout, a psychosis blackout. It was drug induced. But she has major mental health problems, and when she doesn't want to take her medication, they force her. They hold her on the ground, and they stick a needle in her, and they force her to take it. So it's not only that their mental health isn't being addressed, and that they're not we don't get therapy inside, and we don't get to work through the stuff that got us in these situations to begin with. It's actually the stress of the environment and the oppression that happens inside is actually making it worse. So okay. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. In the beginning when we talked about the absence of just baseline quality care, I would imagine that higher end privileged care, such as addressing a mental health issue, is extremely far from absent.
Yeah, they have a psychiatrist. They in the prison I was at with approximately 1,000 women, anywhere from like 850 to 950 to 1050 at any time. There was one psychiatrist, and it was he was, and a couple of therapists who did what they could, but they had 15-minute appointments, so you didn't really get therapy. You got referred to the psychiatrist, and then you got prescribed a medication.
Mm-hmm. Now, it sounds like you've really taken a disciplined and focused path post-incarceration. You went to UC Berkeley. You're now in a grad program at Michigan. I can't imagine it's very common.
No.
So, speaking then for the masses that are paroled or released or whatever the correct term is, what are we doing that and failing in meeting the demands to make these people ready?
Right.
Because it doesn't sound like we're doing anything.
The programs that are available for people to prepare for getting out are limited in, what their preparations are. And now with this exponential advancement in technology, it's like in 1980 you would come out and it's like, okay, cars are going faster, like from 1970 to 1980 there were some changes, right? Mm-hmm. But now going in in 2007 when the iPhone was released, I'm pretty sure it was the same month I went in. It was June 2007, and I think that was when the first iPhone came out. So I never saw an iPhone. I never saw an app, and I got out mm-hmm. in 2017. And
you had a camera in your pocket.
We're all what?
When you got out, there was a camera in your pocket.
Oh, computer in your pocket, and camera, and all of it. Yeah, and a phone, and your bank account, and everything's connected. And you're like, what the fuck is a cloud? What's happening? Why is my phone connected to my computer? What is going on? And why is it reading my thumbprint? It was a trip, and that's how fast everything was moving, and it was just like change causes stress, and stress causes depression, mm-hmm. and we don't keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. The support from people who have been through what you have been through is underestimated. Like how helpful that could be. Mm-hmm. The stress of having a cop be able to come into your house and look around whenever they want. It's like you're locked up. Like you're literally, like when you're inside, a cop can come into your cell at any time and toss your room and look through all your belongings. You know what I mean? And so like these are things that it's like, yeah, I'm free, but am I? Right.
Well, and going back to when we talked about the social determinants of health, your access to education, your access to healthcare, your economic stability, coming out with quote unquote a record, yeah. You're not going to get a very high paying job right out of prison. Getting into an academic program, I'm sure many universities have sort of a bridge or gateway program, but at the same time, you need to be stable to pay for classes, or you need to have a roof over your head. You got a lot of other stressors. So coming out of prison, you're already set up to kind of re-enter a system that helped you put you in there in the first place.
Exactly. So here's another thing. I was taking classes through Ohio University's college program for the incarcerated when I was inside, but when I got out, before I got into UC Berkeley, I tried to get into the classes at Ohio University, and they said because of my criminal history, I could not. I could continue doing the college program for the incarcerated through the mail, and I could, submit my papers because it was independent study. Mm-hmm. I could submit my papers online, but I couldn't take classes as a student, like even remote classes. Mm-hmm. So that was huge. It was like, even in a university that allowed me to they took my money, $800 for a freaking course when I was in prison. Mm-hmm. but they wouldn't let me be a student when I got out, you know. So there are many institutions that, because I didn't pass their legal assessment. So there are places, especially in California, they've got underground scholars at the university, at some universities, not all, but they're, you know, popping up. Definitely at Riverside, Berkeley, I think UCLA, Santa Barbara, definitely. They have at San Francisco State and other state college, I believe, Project Rebound. Here at Michigan, you know, it's like if you know like who to talk to, like this is obviously like if I'm here, then like people can come to this, but they're very forward-thinking public universities that are doing a lot of work with this kind of stuff to begin with. You know?
Okay, so then what do you say to the, you know, loud voices in the crowd that say, well, you know, screw you, you're a criminal. You don't deserve to be thrown into a great job or have great access to education or a nice house. You know, you had your chance.
Good question. I mean, for those people, I would say I'm going to do it anyway. Sorry, not sorry. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to continue to educate people on, you know, this backward ass system that we have and the carceral state, you know, of America. And I'm just, you know, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I don't really care what, you know, people think. And, you know, unfortunately, some people don't care about learning about the history and how we got to where we're at today. But I think there are a lot more people who do care than don't.
How about taking it a step further to the policies and people that say, well, you know, you don't deserve Sensodyne toothpaste or you don't deserve health care while you're in prison. You're there to serve your time because you're a criminal.
Right. Well, I would say, just so you know, you've got criminals all around you. You know, they just aren't getting caught, or you just don't know that they just got paroled. So if you're not giving these people care inside, it's going to affect your community. It's better to get these things in place in our communities so that we could prevent people from going in to begin with. But if they are inside, they're going to be coming out, most of them. And when they do, you know, if you want your community to thrive and, you know, have a successful society, then we need to put resources into, like, you know, the health of these communities inside before they get out and while they're out, of course.
So, and then now let's think about the other side of that argument, or the other voices that are probably don't get as much attention and are probably a bit quieter. But what can we do as citizens or voters or friends and family of those incarcerated to help affect change? Is it go beyond simply writing your congressman? Are there websites and foundations and causes that we should be getting involved in? And, you know, give me the names of them and I'll put them on the little chyron on the bottom of the screen.
Right. You know, I think that's a question I should be asking you, because I'm a historian. You're the policy guy.
I'm trying to get your voice out there.
Yeah, and that is, I think, like, you know, for me, it's educating and understanding the realities, you know, the history of how we got here. When you understand that, you know, a lot of the problem is racist policy that just hasn't, like it hasn't been very long since we've changed those things. So of course, you know, ethnic communities, that minority communities are in a position already vulnerable. And so we have to be proactive about changing these things, and we can't just leave it to those people. As privileged white, you know, Americans, we need to take responsibility for making those changes so that everyone has access to health care and education. And, you know, I like to learn, and one of the things I have that I get on my phone every day, well, it's in my email every day, but one of the things I get is a daily email, and it's basically, let's see, it's the Equal Justice Initiative, I believe, A History of Racial Injustice, EJI. But you get a daily email on this day, and you learn about the racial injustice for every single day. There is a memory, a memory of what happened, and an event, and it is focused around racial injustice and racism and policy and the stuff that we don't look at on a regular basis. And so by having that commitment just to read that one thing every day, that one thing, I really get to understand how deeply ingrained race, racialization and criminalization are in our society. And I recommend that people do that, because that's how, so many times I just hear, like, that homeless person, like, why don't they just go get a job? Or like, well, slavery's been over for so long now. Like, why are we still talking about it? And when you see these things every day, you start to understand, you read these stories, you understand that, like, this system has been created, has continued to function in a way to oppress people, to hold minority people down. And when you learn how seriously, like, that thread through society that we have, it just it makes, like, I don't know, it just, for me, it's sad, but it reinforces what I'm doing, and why I'm here, and it reminds me that I have a responsibility to change things.
How long have you been out now? When were you? 6 years.
Yeah.
And
As of last month.
as of last month, so sentencing June 25th, 6 years.
Well, I actually had a couple weeks time served from before I got out on bail.
Oh,
So I got out the ninth.
a couple weeks compared to your 10 years.
Yeah.
You mentioned you mentioned walking down the street. Are there things that triggered you within the first 6 months that are a little bit less triggering now, 6 years removed? Like, is some of the effects of being in prison sort of diminishing as time goes on, but sort of lost,
Oh, yeah.
but never forgotten?
Definitely. So when I got out, I was told by my family that I was leaving the water running, and I, like, in the bathroom, I would come out of the bathroom, the water would be running, because you have, like, a push button and it just stops on its own inside. So, I had to get used to, like, turning the water off again. Hearing keys was a, like, oh, you hear keys, like, the cops are here, because you don't have keys in prison. Like, you don't get keys.
Right.
There are some jails where you have a key to your cell, but that's, county jails are very different. I went in when I was 26, and I was 36 when I got out, and I hadn't seen myself in a full-length mirror for 10 years. And there's that time where, you're entering middle age as a woman, your body changes, and so I was deeply affected when I saw myself in a full-length mirror for the first time in 10 years. It took a while for me to get, like, the color back in my skin, as someone said one time. I didn't wear shorts. I still rarely do, because I just, like, being in public is very different from being, like, around a bunch of women. You know what I mean?
So, okay, so and by all means, don't answer this question if you don't want to. And this is maybe kind of selfish because it's curious of me, but you're still young. You're obviously well-educated, well-spoken, articulate. You're an attractive woman. Perhaps you've thought about having a family. Where does your experience or history come in when you think about your social life post-incarceration? I mean, do you go on Match.com and make it part of your profile? I mean, what, do you
Right.
go out on a couple dates and then it comes up
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, by the way, I was in prison for 10 years. I mean, if I was somewhere, and in all honesty, you've been more than vulnerable with me. If I was out and a buddy of mine was like, hey, you should come meet this girl. She's a PhD student. Oh, by the way, she was in prison for 10 years. I might be like, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awkward for sure. It's hard because it's such a big part of my past and it informs all the stuff I'm doing today. So how'd you get into, wanting to study incarceration? Well, let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
Or what were you doing before, it's not like I'm in a grad program and I'm 30. Like
Right.
I'm 42. I'm almost 43. And I had this big chunk of time before I went back to school. So what was I doing? I was training dogs. I was a tutor for adult education. There's all this experience. So it definitely is awkward. I've decided personally not to do the whole app thing because it's got to come up, and there's never really a right time. If you don't bring it up early enough, you feel like you're being dishonest. If you bring it up too early, you're ruining any chances of getting to know someone for who you are without getting that stigma
Right.
in the way. So it's been a little awkward. Usually what happens is, I've been getting to know people and, eventually maybe going out.
Did anybody avoid you when you got out? Did you lose some people?
From outside?
Yeah, from your early 20s and late teens, from when you went in, did you have people that you were friends with before you went in that broke off contact with you when you got out?
I don't know. So what happened is that the political climate, the fucking whirlwind from I was inside for Obama's entire presidency. So I went in when Bush was president and came out when Trump was president.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And so, you have this whole backlash thing to Obama and people's true colors coming out with Trump.
Well, did you have your out date from the day you went in, and they said in 10 years you're going to get out, or did you become eligible like at year 8? They're like, okay, listen, you're going to do 2 more years.
No, it was, I knew I would go to the parole board and I might not make it, but they couldn't keep me past 12 and a half years because I always worked. I never had a major write-up, I always programmed. I kept my good time. So that 12 and a half was the longest they could keep me. So even if I didn't get out after 10, they couldn't keep me longer than 12.
What's like the final week like? I mean, I would think an out date is something they'd want to surprise you with, but like if somebody came to me today and was like, listen, August 25th, you're getting out. The next 30 days would be impossible for me. You'd get senioritis to an nth degree.
Yes, totally. And part of it, you're just sitting back and nothing bothers you, but everything bothers you.
Yeah.
You're like, none of this shit matters. I'm going to be out of here and I'm going to be in contact with my friends, and then you're not, but you're like, none of this matters.
Can you think of any top line bullet points? Like, how can we change the system? Like, what are some of the things that need to change, right away for us to think about?
Yeah, let's redirect the money that we put into jails and prisons and policing into the community and into, healthcare and education. And, we really need our community. I don't think we're meant to be isolated from each other in the way that a lot of us are today. Looking, behind the screen of a phone. I think that, it's important to have friends and to be in contact with those people and to talk to each other and, be real and vulnerable with one another, your family, your friends. If you don't have family, there are people, there are programs out there, but we need to invest more in those things. Ann Arbor is a really cool place for that. And they actually have a program here based on something developed in Seattle called LEAD. LEAD, and it's law enforcement something maybe, I don't know, but I forget. I just came across it, but basically it's to redirect people from the system before they're ever arrested into drug treatment programs, into, you know, shelters, you know, whatever the things that they should like have access to on the outside, rather than just getting arrested and going to jail. Because once you have that record, people don't want to hire you, people don't want to date you, you know, people don't want to let you live in their complex.
Right.
So
People don't want you to attend their school.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They don't want you to watch their kids. They, you know, all of it. So redirecting that money into community and, you know, changing our thinking, you know.
I always like to end with two questions. The first one I think we've already kind of answered, and the two questions are, what have you learned and what do you look forward to? I think you've already covered what you've learned in the last hour, so maybe we can just jump ahead to, you know, what are some of the things you look forward to?
You know, I look forward to learning more and teaching more and seeing what, you know, the rest of the day has to offer.
I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you for your work. This is amazing stuff you're doing. I'm excited to see where you go.
Oh, thanks. Hopefully it'll make a difference. So I do appreciate the time very, very, very much.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
All right.